Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for being here. We'll go ahead and get started. It's great to have such a good turnout. The topics that we're going to talk about today have been a concern of the city for quite some time, and they're not issues that are unique to Columbus. If you drive outside of Columbus, you see litter along the way going into other communities. And I know all communities are trying to come up with sustainable ways to clean up their cities. And it's more than just picking up trash. We have ordinances in place to try to help us keep our city looking presentable. That appearance has a lot to do with quality of life. It has a lot to do with economic development. It just touches people's lives in so many ways. A clean environment is a healthier community for folks. And you know, we have a beautiful city here that we live in, but we also have areas where we could use improvement. So we've had a couple of groups in the community that recently have been trying to find ways to build momentum in cleaning up the city. One has been the Pick It Up Possum Town group. There's been another group, the Earth Day group, that has done a couple cleanings around Hunt High School. In the past, there's been the Clean Sweep committee here in Columbus. We've been a member of the Keep America Beautiful program, which is part of Keep Mississippi Beautiful. But what we've never been able to do thus far is really find a way to bring everybody together on these projects and find long-term solutions. And that's not an easy thing to do. So in the different meetings that we've been having, there have been questions that have come up periodically about what is the city's policy on this, what ordinance is in place for this. One of the things that we've talked about is there are a few signs around town where we offer fines for people who are littering, but are we enforcing those? We've had phone calls from citizens recently, since some of this has been in the news, said that they've seen people dumping, and they took pictures of their car tags and called them in. You know, what can we do to help prevent this? A big important part of it for me, which is where I would like to focus a lot of my attention, is the education side of it. When I was growing up as a kid, I've mentioned this many times, we had the litter bug who came into the schools and talked about keeping your community clean. And so that's where we came up with the idea of playing off of our hometown name. Our nickname is Possum Town. That's where I came up with the idea for a Mayor Possum puppet and the term "Don't Be a Litter Critter." I'm working with some folks on how we can build some coloring sheets and things to go into the schools with to get kids excited about learning about their environment and how they can help us keep it clean. We've even talked about maybe in the summertime where we can have programs for our youth in the community where we can hire them to clean in certain areas of the city. But what we want to do is make sure we're not just focusing on downtown or Highway 45, but we're working on the entire city. A seamless city cleanup where we're going into communities and trying to help people maintain the look of our city. As I mentioned before, it's helpful for everybody. So today we have department heads who a lot of their focus is in this area. We have Jeff Turnage with us, our city attorney. And so I think most everybody knows everybody in the room, so I won't take up your time going around to introduce everybody. But when you're talking at some point, if you'll tell us who you are and what your role is. We've had some volunteer groups within the city who have wanted to be a big part of this and have helped quite a bit. Melissa is the chair of the Pick It Up Possum Town committee, and there's several people in the room that she's worked closely with on their particular projects. So having said all that, I'm going to turn it over to Melissa to talk about some of the specific questions that y'all had, which were in the email that y'all sent out. I thought that might be a good way to get started.
Okay, that is a good way to get started. And with that, if I can, since Mr. Doug Kolarski knows those questions better than I am going to give him the floor.
Sure.
If I may.
And I'd like to give Marion the floor. No. Okay, so So the whole issue is that there's laws in the books. We discovered that there's all sorts of laws that can be enforced. We understand that some of them are not enforceable, and that we need to have a connection with the city. If we're going to have the Pick It Up Possum Town or other groups, or have an umbrella group, we're going to need to have some kind of a sort of substance that we can use as probably a lair before citing litterers or businesses. That we would have a citizen eyeball group that goes around and says you're in violation without having a problem with legalities and liabilities. So right now we have a pretty substantial movement and interest in what Pick It Up Possum Town is doing, but we don't have any connection with the city, and there's things that could be done. We're suggesting that there be a Pick It Up Possum Town or that umbrella group on the city website. And in addition to that, Columbus has an action page which citizens can go to, and we would like to have the Pick It Up Possum Town have all these different links to the Columbus action page, residence page, waste disposal page, link to the city e-notification, notify me page, and then post the municipal codes on that Pick It Up Possum Town site or page. And then there's also subsections. There's also reference to the person on the books. It says that a health officer needs to be the person that contacts some of these violators. We don't know who the health officer is right now, or if there ever was one, or if we need one. So those are the issues that we're trying to, we've kind of spent time looking at the problem and trying to solve it without having, we don't have the power as a citizen-led group, but we can see what's there and what's possible and what probably works, and that's where we are.
I believe that, if I can interject really quick, we've had a successful citywide cleanup. We've been at Market Street to get the word out, and really at this point, I really believe in order for this long campaign, because this will take a long time, the next step is businesses. That in my humble opinion, I think we really need to target that. To me, your main drags, your Highway 45, your Highway 82, that's your kitchen and living room, of the house, that main community area where we see. And we would love to be, as a group of people to go on these properties and clean up for them. But we realize that it's really their responsibility, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the city, or excuse me, the businesses is where we need to target next, so that we know what is available from that.
I don't have any problem with that, but I think that this is a universal problem. It's people coming into town. It's the vendors, the retailers. It's the property owners that are not local. There's a lot of property owners that don't live here, and there's all these issues with people. I mean, there's a fishing tournament every single weekend. There's all sorts of events. So it's, they're going to be attending all these venues. We do see venues, restaurants and such, starting to clean up more. But I think it's, we can start anywhere. It just, we need to start somewhere and anywhere, but we don't have any enforcement right now.
Well, that's a lot to unpack, because there are several different layers to, I think, what we're talking about today. I think what would be good, and anybody else can chime in, I'm going to ask Jeff to talk about it a little bit, is to kind of give the group that's here kind of what we have in place now in the city. There are several things that the city is looking at doing. One, I think Sasha probably holds a position that would have been
She's the code enforcement officer. So people with a uncleanliness complaint, we'd call code enforcement.
I think
So,
that's just an antiquated name that you saw in the,
yeah, and our codes could be updated to more properly reflect their actual title, but that's gonna be who it is our code
Some of
enforcement.
these, excuse me, some of these businesses are pretty substantial, and if we have a name that, you know, they could use that against us and say, well, you're not the right person to give us this file, you know, so those need to be updated so that we're, all our i's are dotted and t's are crossed, and it's a big job for Sasha, I think, too, so.
Can we update for private people to tell somebody?
No, it
We
would.
would have to go through Sasha anyway. wouldn't
If we cite people for some sort of a misdemeanor, Ms. James is not even gonna be the one to serve the citation. She would prepare a municipal offense ticket, and then a police officer would go serve it on that person. So until she goes to the state law academy and gets her police badge, we won't be sending her to issue citations. Some people react negatively to getting a ticket, and they need to have somebody that can arrest them if they don't act right when they get served. So I would never, it's not legal for her to do that anyway, but I would discourage the city from sending somebody who's not a law enforcement officer to do that function.
What we were thinking was that we could serve, you know, as a citizen-led group, is that we can identify the problem and then have a step, you know, we determine a step, you know,
Yeah.
program.
Well, and I'm not arguing with that at all. Right now, when she gets a complaint, we almost always follow the state code instead of the municipal code, and it's a civil remedy, it's not a criminal one, because we haven't found that prosecuting cases in our municipal court works very well. The judges aren't really familiar with our city codes. They are interested in what's the state law, and then they nitpick the issues of the complaint, and it's just easier to follow 21-1911. There's nothing in this code that requires a friendly effort, but we start with a letter called a notice of violation just as a courtesy, in hopes that we don't have to expend the money to file a pleading called a Liz Pendens notice in the court file, so that anybody else will be aware there's a pending case. And then if you go through 21-1911, it's a lengthy process. You gotta have days in advance, 2 weeks before the hearing. They get to be served with a summons, and then they go to the council meeting, and if the council finds the property is a menace, then we send it to the Public Works Department, who's overburdened and underpaid and not enough of them, and it takes a while. And once they finally clean it up, if the owner doesn't beat them to the punch, then we put a lien on the property. It's expensive. It might take 3 years for us to get our money back on a lien. We could sue, but that's never worth the money on a small claim. So,
So these are the same statutes you're using for
yeah, 21
abandoned property?
Well, abandoned property falls within this. Yeah.
Okay, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, anything that's such a state of uncleanliness to constitute a nuisance to the health, safety, and welfare of the community falls within this, and then we have the right to go in and demolish. We have the right to clean up, fill in cesspools and cisterns, and remediate places where mosquitoes are breeding and overgrowth of vegetation. That's the method we've used. And several years we used to try to amend the code every time they amended the state law, and it got so tiresome because they changed the law every year in Jackson. We just quit. I just put an X through our municipal code dealing with that, and we just follow the state law. But so there should be, if y'all want to take on a preliminary communication effort, it's certainly, I can't see any downside for us.
So kind of like a neighborhood watch, so to speak, but for litter, essentially.
And another option would be to funnel them all to the city and then let the city make the friendly call, so you don't expose yourself to an argument with the public. But I don't see where we would mind if you wanted to do that.
Okay, Sasha?
Mm-hmm.
Sasha?
Oh,
Yeah, how difficult, you know, we don't want to overburden you. You don't really have the staffing to do this across the whole city right now, right? I mean, this would be a pretty big burden for you if we had a bunch of problems coming in. You have enough to do right now, right? Okay. Okay. Well, what I'm saying is that, you know, the city has issues, and if we were to identify all those issues, I mean, it could be a substantial workload. And I'm just,
90% of them probably already know about it. She probably already have some type of file, and, you know,
Okay.
just going through the process. It's the hardest part, because most people know the process over the years. You know, they know they got this amount
How
of
to work
time.
around it.
to do this,
These
you know.
offenders, people,
Right.
I won't call them slumlords, but people that own a lot of rental property, they let them grow up. And so some of those I've advocated, if we've had them before us several times, to heck with the notice of violation. Just start with a summons. But they're still slick about it because we can't collect all of our costs associated with preparing a summons and complaint and bringing it before the city council if they get out if they get out there at any time before Casey can cut the grass and they cut it themselves, we just wasted a bunch of time and there's no recovery for us.
Everything that we've spoken about is why we can't do it.
Yeah, no,
Is there anything that you've thought of, or Sasha, of how to work around some of the issues that is holding up cleaning the city, or
Well,
getting them to react?
well, we've thought and thought, and I'm gonna say, without any offense to Public Works, because it's no fault of theirs, we don't have enough manpower and equipment and money to timely clean the property up once the council orders immediate abatement. If we did, it would be a whole different picture. And we just don't, because they're busy cleaning ditches and fixing infrastructure and other things that, I'm not saying they take a priority, but they're at least as important
Sure.
as those problems.
Well, what we've done as citizen-led group is that we have a growing capacity to clean, and that we're going to work together. I mean, try to alleviate the shortage of money. You know, and we're free, and we bring our own materials, and we're going to solicit businesses once we get a connection of this group to the city, on the city, so that we can go, as a 501c3 to have donations and such. I mean, we had some people going to retailers and saying, we're doing this, and they're handing things over, which really is it's not the way it should go. So what we'd like to do, and the reason why we put those things down, that we need to have an integration. For us to help this Civil Works and Sasha, we need to have a connection of this group, the citizens of Columbus, and a way for us to funnel the citizens that want to help out to have a connection to the city.
Since Casey was always short-handed on cutting grass, because once you cut it one time, then 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, and he's cutting again, would it be possible for volunteers to help them cut grass, or?
It could, and that would be fine, but if volunteers cut it, we won't be able to go in and collect for a charge, because we can only recover what our costs were to clean it.
But if we hire it out to them?
Yeah, if we've hired it and paid them,
Right.
but then that brings us
But
back
we
to
only still can collect what we paid them, so it wouldn't be like they can volunteer, for $1 and we charge them,
Right.
Right.
No.
What might be better than trying to do those things is maybe if we are able to identify people who need help with their yard cutting and removal of brush and things from their homes, elderly people and others in communities that need help, it might be better for the volunteers to focus on those types of things rather
I
than.
don't think those are the problem, though. I mean, most people that can, living in their properties are the ones that's keeping it up. It's the vacant lots, and it's the, people that's living out of town and, abandoned
There's a lot of
houses
neighbors
and
calling
that.
about their neighbors not cutting their grass. We get them often. And there's a lot of debris. Miss Pat shaking her head. There's a lot of debris in front of people's houses that need to be gone. I mean, I was out.
Yeah, the debris is because we hadn't picked it up, but.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If the volunteers could focus on those kinds of things, I guess what I was hearing you say was like the bigger areas where they're trying to cut and stuff. But I mean, I'm up for anything. That's what the discussion
Well,
is about.
another idea is, we have a trip planned to consider an environmental court And maybe there could be some sort of a misdemeanor fine accompanied by a volunteer effort, where at least the city gets some money back. I don't know that we could turn around and pay a volunteer, but at least the city would not be losing money cleaning up and never recovering.
I see.
Which I think as a volunteer, you have to have permission for a volunteer to go on somebody's private property, right?
Well, if the council orders immediate abatement, we have the right to do it by our own labors or through contracts, so we could contract for volunteer services, I would think.
I see this as not, well, I don't think it's as much a scofflaw issue. I think that, you know, there's good people, tax-paying people that don't know what to do with their trash. And this is another component that, you know, what do you do with your mattress? You know, who's gonna take it? So if we were to have some program, I mean, we could get, I mean, I'll say it, I mean, I can get donations for anything that's purposeful and fact-based from these companies, because they're in our community, they owe it to us to support the community. But we just need to have a place, I mean, this is a good starting point, just have some way of picking up the trash that nobody is supposed to put out there, but have a place for it to go, and then figure out what to do with it. But
Some cities have, because my daughter works for a company that junk removal, and you call this company, they come out and they pick up whatever you need, you know, them to pick up. I mean, they charge, but you know, that's how they do it in a lot of other cities, you know, that don't pick up stuff, you know.
if they're making money doing it, we can turn it into a business and generate revenue too. I mean, it doesn't, you know, I mean, it's easy to use somebody for that purpose, but if somebody's making money off of it, why shouldn't the city? And we can bring our expertise, you know, Douglas USA, to help you all do this. I mean, that's why we're here. I mean, we know how to do a lot of different things. And there's things that need to be done, and you know, the first things is, you know, probably to figure out where this, you know, where the trash that no one knows what to do with, have that going on, you know, some type of effort to identify where or how to get it to some central location rather than in front of their house. I've got a neighbor that, you know, pays his taxes and he has tree limbs in the street. You know, I mean, what am I, you know, I'm not in a position to tell him that that's wrong. But, you know, just, we need to have everybody working off the same book and laws and information, and so that we can all work together as a community. I mean,
And I think that's what that handout that I gave you, there's a chart that tells, as well as the very first thing is discarded furniture, mattresses, carpets, that tells you where to take it or what not to do, and a major education plan would help. There's items not picked up by the waste service, that's on the last page. And then a very simple grid that Angela put together that identifies items to be discarded and the services offered, and that's right, I only gave one to Miriam. Yeah.
see, that's the thing I'm really speaking about. There are issues, I mean, there are ways of getting rid of trash, but there's also things that nobody wants. And we still need, and that's still creating a problem. So let's not work on what's there already, that there's a reason or there's a way to get rid of certain trash, but let's try to figure out how to get rid of the trash that nobody knows what to do with. Have a central location that it can be taken to, instead of, you know, disturbing wildlife, hurting streams, polluting, all that. But you know, that's just a small thing. We just say, if you have trash, if you have the kind of trash that we normally don't pick up, give us a call. And at least have some discussion about what we're going to do with it. Because otherwise, they're going to put it wherever they think they can get away with it.
Now, one of the things, is it possible, the thing that I see when I drive throughout neighborhoods is a lot of household trash. People don't have trash cans. And normally, in cities, when you move in, you sign up for your light and water and trash, they provide you with a trash can. It has a code number on it. And if it breaks down, you call them, they bring another. I see families when they take their trash out, they set the trash bag on the side of the street. Wildlife come and put it all over the place, blows in the neighbor's yard, no one goes over to pick it up. So I think one of the things we need to work on, how do we get trash receptacle to these residents? Just put a plastic bag out on the street. That would be a big start.
Yeah, and I know Councilman Jones has asked me about that a number of times. Another option would be for us to do it through Golden Triangle Waste Services. I know that in other parts of their system, they provide cans for I call them customers, whatever you want to call them. I think over in Oktibbeha County, they did it.
Maybe for it at some point.
I know the city was giving away garbage bags.
Yeah, they gave away garbage bags and
But
stuff.
Golden Triangle Waste was actually, I think the county paid an extra fee for them to provide the can.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
The company paid, not the company didn't provide it, the city or the county paid for it.
But the company went out and procured all of them and then
Right,
provided it for an added cost.
right. So
It's probably cheaper than your average landlord would get it at Lowe's, just going down there making a one-time purchase. Because Golden Triangle Waste is a government agency, wouldn't have to pay sales tax.
They have numbers on them where you can identify what house it goes to.
Correct.
Yeah.
I'm willing to be a killjoy, because everything you just spoke of is an obstacle, and it's not fast. I propose doing a use my can. If, we're not living in some wealthy, across the board wealth, socioeconomic group. Some people can't afford a garbage can. And I would like to do a social campaign, a community campaign that says, use my can. If somebody has trash and they can't afford a trash can, put it in my trash can.
Oh, no.
That's what I want to do. That's what, there's no cost, there's no cost to it. There's no additional cost. What's that?
Get a big can.
Well, if you have a neighbor that has a bag all the time on the ground, you laugh, but that's what community is. It's not a laughing matter, really.
Well, I'm not talking about passing that cost necessarily the whole amount on to the tenant or the landowner. I'm talking about, we pay Golden Triangle Waste. So the question is, do we want to buy the cans?
Have anyone looked into it? Because we started a program a couple of years ago.
When he was here, but it was gonna be expensive. But I do think that with apartments, any apartment that has two, and this is what I was having Jeff work on, any apartment that's a duplex or more, we should force them to supply either a trash can or a dumpster. Apartment buildings should not be putting bags out in front of their houses because they get tore up and then, they put them out all the time of night. So that's one thing that we definitely need to be working on, making them supply,
We need an ordinance
something,
like that.
yes.
And
Well, that's what Jeff has been working on, the ordinance for that,
Well, the other thing, at my ward, there's apartment complex that have dumpster, but because we don't have buried cable and electrical wires, it comes over, and the way the truck works, it lifts it and brings it over. There's no room to lift that dumpster, so they have to put a small one. And when all of the residents come out and put their trash, the dumpster is full, they just set it down beside the trash bin.
And he won't get out to do nothing.
And it's not the responsibility
Not pick
of
up
the guy
anything.
driving the truck to get out and pick all this trash up.
Yeah. Well, he should be able to call and they still paying, each person in that apartment building is still paying for their trash to be picked up. So if he don't want to get out, then they should have another truck that comes around after he does. If he calls and report it and say, we got trash on the outside, then they should have somebody to come, because they still paying for their trash to be picked up. It's just something that needs to be done with and make them follow,
That's a great idea. How do we make that a protocol? How do we make that happen?
Whoever's picking up,
Yeah,
But this is not just trash, this is just trash scattered everywhere. That guy would never be able to drive his truck and pick up
No, I'm
any
not
trash.
saying him get out and pick it up if that's gonna waste his time, but then you still have the regular trucks that come around. They should go out and get it, because even if it's 2 bags in front of it, he don't get out. So those 2 bags gonna stay there, right, you know.
This guy is not gonna pick it up, that's for sure.
Right.
See, that was a part of our, you know, what we discussed on how to begin the Pick It Up Possumtown is that if there's a commercial pickup service and they go there and they see it overfilled, then the city should be able to tell them they need 2, you know, they need 2 of these dumpsters.
Well, they may not have room for 2.
Well, that's-
I mean, some of them don't have room.
That's a big
you
issue
know,
in
yeah.
a lot of places.
Yeah, a lot
They don't have
Yeah.
room for one.
Yeah.
And sometimes
Right.
they've been put out and they're not adequately put out. I mean, they're taking up parking places and they're in the street, and neighbors get mad when they got big dumpsters sitting in their neighborhoods. And
Now we're talking about zoning issues, because there should be some zoning issues that says if you're gonna have an apartment building, you have to have a number of parking spaces, right? And you have to have enough trash, should be a part of that zoning. So now we're talking about other issues.
But if an apartment is built before we had the zoning, then they're grandfathered, and so, then what? I mean, I'm not trying to erect hurdles, it's just, it's a real challenge, like over here on Southside Monterey Apartments. They got space for the small dumpster, and barely space because part of the dumpster sticks out on the road right away. And we asked the Golden Triangle folks, you know, put it back off the road right away. Well, because of the way the street is constructed, if their car's parked, they can't,
we finally got that removed.
yeah, finally they got rid of that.
I mean, and it was right in people's front doors too before
And,
that.
yeah, and then they come early in the morning and they bang, slam it down and wake all the neighbors
4
up.
o'clock in the morning.
Yeah,
Well, here's the issue, is that whoever these people are, if they're in violation and they're not owning an apartment building for free. They're making money to litter our city, essentially. So there has to be something that the city can do, and I'm not sure what it is, but, you know, just because there's no space for it, they're gonna have to figure that out. And that's their responsibility if the city tells them to. I mean, I can't do anything, you know, I own property and I can't do certain things. So,
Since we are talking property, I'd like to go back to the business aspect if I can. So I'm very aware of litter, more so than I've ever been. So I'm driving along 45 and I see an empty property, the grass is growing up. I know the building it's not occupied, so I know there's an owner. So going back to the kind of the neighborhood watch on this, if I wanted to be so bold and to say, hey, I mean, what ordinance is, I mean, let me back up. Could I as a citizen say, hey, Joe Blow Restaurant, did you know there's an ordinance that this parking lot needs to be cleaned up? Is there something, can you do that, or is it?
As a citizen, you might get cursed out, but you can do it, you know, but you can do anything as a
just so
citizen.
you're careful.
But first, you would probably, you know, call Sasha and give her, and let her make the call
I've got
to
a
her,
long
because she's employed with the, you know, with the
Yeah.
city, I would think, you know.
And then, so an empty property, let's say, okay, so it's Jimmy John. So they're growing up, they've got a bunch of litter. Are they responsible, that owner, that building and property, are they responsible for cleaning that up?
Yes.
All the time?
And they normally are represented by a real estate firm, which.
Now, a lot of
which would have
times,
to
like,
do that.
when it does flood, like out there by Wendy's, I think the water running in there on the side of the bowling alley, when it floods, I think it brings a lot of trash, so it may not necessarily be, you know, people throwing it out right there, it's just coming from somewhere else, you know, in the ditches. I've seen that a lot, because, you know, I've asked Casey and them to go out and they'll clean up, and we get a heavy rain, and then it's right back, you know, like it was, so, you know, I don't know.
And Jimmy John's property just recently sold, I believe. I believe I have contact information for that owner. I'll contact him.
So, and then going back, thank you, and then going back to Doug's point, you know, having that one destination where we're talking about education and we're trying to get the word out. So with that education, I would imagine there would have to be some type of televised, commercialized campaign that is just in the eyes of every citizen as much as possible, whether it's social media, WCBI, the newspaper, whatever, where there can be the links to everything, okay? So here's the list of all your dumping grounds for mattresses. Here's your list of, I saw a sign the other day over off of Blue Cut where there's somebody who's trying to make money and saying, hey, if you've got whatever scraps, you know, call this number, we'll come get you. So I just think if you're gonna educate and everybody's all in it, everybody's on the same page, that you've got the citizen-led group and not just Pick It Up because there's more out there. So if you're gonna educate, then we have to have that campaign of education, what's on the books. A couple of weeks ago, I read the city ordinances as far as business and private. So basically, if I went over to Lowe's and I littered, they could say, hey, Citizen Melissa, you can't litter here. It's this code is right here. And then on that same flip side, the Lowe's is responsible for the litter. So it's a two-way street. So the only way anybody's really gonna know about it is that education. And how do we educate? We talk about it, we show them. So that's just my piece. And again, I am really just, for me personally, I would go knock on every business door saying, hey, do you know? I mean, we are a beautiful city. I love this city. And I think that there's so many different facets, so many different tracks in order to make it happen. I think there needs to be a city track, there needs to be the citizen-led track, there needs to be the education track. So that is my piece.
One of those items on that sheet is, you know, trying to use technology. I'm surprised that each council member can't email each one of their constituents, and we can't get a list of the businesses in the city. That should be readily available if we're going to be a modern, progressive city, that we need to communicate. And it's not education. A lot of people don't like the word education. There's pushback. It's about communications. We're not trying to dumb down people and such. It's just a matter of communicating what's right and what's beneficial to everyone. And I think that is going to get a lot more with the carrot instead of trying to tell people what to do, because I think that the people of Columbus are good and they're appreciative, and they really like their city as much as Melissa does. But sometimes we just don't know what to do as a citizen. And that's why we came together. We think that maybe we can put our shoulders together and help. And, you know, we're available, you know, if there's a good idea. We had 250 people last time. I expect 4 times as many people at our September event. So we need to figure out what we're going to do with those people. And between now and then is a good time to determine what our, you know, not enforcement, but what our ability is to connect with the city and to be able to tell them that this is the statute that you're in violation of. But I understand the tenacity and I respect what Melissa's saying, but that's a little bit, you know, I mean, if we were to send emails out to people and call them, and it'd be more efficient and probably safer as well. So until we get those kind of communications available to us, it's going to take a long time going door to door and trying to find the right person. Who's been in sales? He's not here right now. I'll take your card. Or, you know, I mean, that just doesn't, you know, we need to investigate and get good information as to who owns what business. I mean, the lists are out there. I mean, it's not that much money. But I think, you know, I'm really surprised that the council people cannot contact their constituents directly and tell them things that are important to their, you know, to their core group. And that would be a great way to communicate with everybody and get them on the same ideas that are beneficial to the city.
Anybody else in the room? We've been hearing a lot from the same people. Anybody else said there was some thoughts or ideas or?
Yeah, I just want to say that, you know, my wife and I just recently moved, and it was surprising to me. It was surprising to me that we didn't get a garbage can from the trash company, and I'll tell you why. Because first of all, now I see in our neighborhood people bring out all sorts of different kinds of trash cans, and everybody does a good job. But that means that the trash company has to have people riding on the back to get off, and they pick those cans up and dump them in.
Sling 'em.
The equipment that we came from Jacksonville, it had a driver, nobody else. And that driver drove up and they had these big, I'm gonna call them dumpsters, but they're not full dumpsters, they're rolling dumpsters. That machine would come up, pull up, it hooked, bring it
That's
up,
what they do
put
in
it in the
county.
truck and drove away.
They do that in the
Starville,
city
in Starville, yeah,
where
where they have the
where
trash
they have
cans,
the
yeah.
right kind of can.
And I think when you talk about the cost of those containers for the garbage company, the savings of the labor would be a big trade-off versus the cost of those. And the other thing is that if you don't have those standard containers, if you ever want to get to effective recycling, how are you going to do it? In our experience in Jacksonville, and I hate this because people in California used to come up to Oregon and tell us how to do everything, and that's not my intent. That's not my intent right now. But I do want to say that on Thursdays, the recycling came around. Same way, same trucks. And then and we only got trash pickup once. We're getting it twice a week now. That's probably more than at least my wife and I need it. But it's surprising to me because that, you know, we just put out whatever kind of container we go purchase. So they have to deal with it. And I'm a little surprised that the trash company hasn't gotten, whoever that is, and I don't know who it is, but
So, by the way, service does residential.
yeah, but we need to develop, I would just say that we need to develop that so they're more efficient in their operation, and then the residents can depend on them being there that day. And sometimes it gets off kilter because of the holidays and stuff. But generally, if you have that, and the only other thing that I haven't seen here, maybe you have it, but I've seen it everywhere else we've lived, is where we have groups that adopt a street or adopt an area. And, you know, in Jacksonville, the university band adopted Highway 21. I understand it's risky, but
I adopted my block, I was mowing everything on my side of the street.
I try to get it to come by.
I keep my trash picked up on mine, so I guess I adopted my
Chuck
street.
easily on one side and Bill back on the other, I was mowing.
the only other thing is that I think there is a combination of people who just are not going to, are scofflaws versus people who can't do it themselves and need help. I think there's a combination out there, and I would love, I'll tell you, last weekend, because we're in the middle of a move, I was looking up 1-800-JUNK, because I'm trying to figure out how I'm gonna get rid of some stuff that I don't wanna move.
Mary just looked horrified. Do you think he's thrown away your stuff, Mary?
No, it was a combination idea. There's stuff we don't want to bring, and we, to sell the house, we have to empty the house.
So and, you know, I think that if you look at the opportunity, if 1-800-JUNK makes money, there's no reason why, if we have a revenue producing department, doing the seed money to put that in place can be found. But, you know, it needs to support itself. But I will tell you that when we moved from San Antonio to Jacksonville, it probably cost us $300 for 1-800-JUNK to come out and pick everything up.
That was more than that.
Who was it? Oh, God. But those are the kinds of things that, you know, if I've got a mattress and I don't have a pickup truck, what do I do?
Well, one of the things that I know when Mark was here, he was crunching some numbers one time, and he had looked up how, you know, garbage trucks now are so sophisticated. One person can drive them, and the arms can pick them up. And he was crunching some numbers saying that almost, because the city outsources it now. He was thinking that if it was studied closer, that the city could buy those trucks and end up making money on garbage pickup rather than where we are right now. And so I know there's some, that's one thing I think we have to be mindful of, is that, a lot of this stuff is beginning to be better equipment, better things like that. for some of the long-term issues that we're talking about. Let's go back on communication, one thing really quickly. We live in the digital age. We put stuff out everywhere, and people still miss it. A lot of people don't look at Facebook, a lot of people don't look at Twitter, a lot of people don't, Instagram, a lot of people don't read the paper, a lot of people can't stand the local TV station, and people don't listen to the radio. Some people don't have computers to go online. Everything we try to put out, we always hear, I didn't see that, y'all didn't advertise it. How did this meeting happen and I not know about it? Part of that problem is that people are inundated with so much information, they actually saw it, but it didn't register. And then when that happens, they're like, I didn't know that, or I can't find this. So I like what Melissa was saying, because I think one of the things is if we can figure out, and it may be doing the things that you mentioned, but I think educating or communicating and letting people know, where to go to do these things. I think the more we do that, and it's habitual, and people know where to go find, that will help a lot. Because a lot of people just say, well, I don't know. Well, if they keep hearing about it or seeing it, they will begin to know.
Well, if I can also springboard off of that, September 17th is our second citywide cleanup. We have from today, May 18th, so we have 4 months to be prepared, better prepared. I think that we did really well, all things considered. We had 6 weeks to pull that off. We now have 4 months. So between now and then, we could do something, we could be doing a lot of things actually to really make that second citywide cleanup even better than the first one. So we can pull in Adopt a Block, the Columbus, the recent cleanup that happened just a little while ago. We could be all inclusive, and all the people I hear about citizens who are just clean up on their own. We have 4 months to do something really big to help communicate what we're trying to do as a whole community together. All back.
And I think that's what we need to try to do, is figure out some action points and then try to work down that timeline as we reach out and do the other larger issues. I think it's good to have conversations like this where we talk about all the needs, and I think it's probably a good time for us to review the ordinances and make sure they're, I think you need to periodically do that. So that's one thing we can be doing, communicating for the thing coming up on the 17th, working with Mr. Jim to see if there's a way to, add the trash cans, like Ms. Stewart mentioned, for citizens.
One other thing,
Sure.
if I can. I know for a fact that people don't read signs, but it's also good to have signs. It's your policy. So when I'm over at the W at Campus Rec, we have certain policies, and when we train our student workers, if they have to tell them something, we're like, oh, well, here it is in black and white. You have to wear a shirt so let's go back to that one litter sign that I know exists at the end of college. That's the only one that I know of, and I didn't know if once that it was reviewed, that we move it to $141 for a fine, that once it's established what it is, that maybe we have more signage, even though people probably will overlook it, but we can, when somebody gets pulled over for littering or whatever, oh, well, there's that sign. There's our policy on sign. That's just a thought.
You know what, on my litter sign, they dump the litter on the sign.
Oh, wonderful. That's just a thought. We had talked about it. Anything that's really been talked about in this meeting, we have been talking about, and everybody is. There's nothing new under the sun. I discovered that a long time ago.
Jim, if you're open to this, I'd like to look into how to monetize the waste together. If we could figure that, I think I can figure it out, and if we can work it within the, without cost to the city, so that it's a doable thing. If there's a place for the litter and how we could do that. Mm-hmm. We have 4 months to come up with a plan, but I'm available. I've started a lot of businesses. This could be a business run by the youth even. It'd be a good way to train some people as to, how to start a business and do that and whatever we need to do. But I think that if there's other companies like you said and I said, if they're making money off the trash, why can't the city?
Do we have a business incubator anywhere?
Not the current,
No?
This would be a good way to maybe get one going.
I think they have had one before, in many years.
And one other resource that is currently a city problem, but could be a city resource for this, is our teenage youth in the city. And, we've been discussing at various meetings opportunities to give them things to do in the summer employment, summer activities. Getting the youth an opportunity to make a few summer bucks and at the same time contribute to the city. That not only is an advantage to them, but that will develop in the future that attitude about cleaning up and keeping things clean.
Would that have to be driven by somebody to volunteer to make that happen in conjunction with the city, or does the city take responsibility for that program?
The city has had a summer program in the past. So the real question is, where would we want it? Meaning the group, where would we want it? Would we want it as part of your volunteer group, in which case the city would somehow subsidize it? Or would it be that we would want it under the supervision of Sasha's department, and then we figure out how we can afford it? I'm just looking at the opportunity to put some young people to work, give them a few bucks, and at the same time, the advantage is that if we use them to mow lawns and clean up lots and stuff, then we're doing some good for the city at the same time. And hopefully they'll get some sort of a opportunity, whether you pay them or you offer it as some sort of, if I was a high school graduate and I'm looking to go to college, I want to earn some money in the summer, for me to offer them a scholarship to do this is a great opportunity too.
Is that something that the city you have your existing yard businesses, small side businesses, is there a program that the city could help subsidize an existing yard service to help them hire young people? Is that a possibility or no? You see what I'm saying?
Well, we don't have a lot of money right now to be subsidizing things. The city really wants to kind of get our finances in order. However, I think that there are businesses and folks in the community that might help subsidize it. There may be, over time, when we work on this, we may be able to find grant money and other possibilities, or build a budget for that kind of thing. But if you're asking, can the city do that right now? No.
Well, we have people signing up because they have to have so many community service hours. We had them sign up at Market Street. So there's a whole pool there that we can pull in by just communicating that these hours count. So we just need to direct them in some sort of fashion to what we need or think is most important too.
But I think that we all danced around what I would call the root issue. And the root issue is a communication program that talks about the beauty and keeping the city of Columbus, making people proud of the city of Columbus and getting them involved in helping the cleanup process. That you have, no matter what other mechanics that we put in place, we have to deal with the root issue of people need to have pride in their street. And that happens because you put that out as a desirable goal for every street in the city. And that calls for whatever kind of communication campaign you can put together. And that is really in the paper, digital, whatever way we can communicate.
We're proposing something like this once we get further down the road, that every citizen would receive.
All right, we're coming up on 1 hour on our meeting.
Let's go.
So I wanted to just see if there's anybody, Kevin, you've been involved with it in the past, with clean sweep and some of those things in the city. Do you have any thoughts or ideas or anything you've heard that?
I'll mention just, in the clean sweep side of things, we've done in the past, we've had a group that have taken basically the city and broke it down over areas to clean. So as we get people together, volunteers to clean, there's already a plan in place, but I always say you have to have a plan in order to deviate from it, right? And so while I wasn't involved in putting that plan together, it's maybe a starting point if y'all haven't already looked at that. It breaks it down into areas that make sense that people can physically walk and clean. Glad to pull that out. We have a lot of other files that were put together by volunteers in our offices in the past. And so while I didn't put it together, I'd love to go through them, offer them to y'all to use from a kickoff point, from a volunteer standpoint. Obviously, it'll benefit the city as well. So that's my involvement. Now, Mayor, you know about the account that's involved with that, and we need to get Jim on that account and get that handed over so it's in the city's coffers. But there are some resources there and opportunities for grants for physical. We would, in the past, we would get everything from buckets and vests to water bottles that could be handed out to volunteers, to little grabbers, things of that nature that would come through those grants. And then, of course, it had monetary values that could purchase whatever else, trash bags that came along, whatever need came out of each community's need. And there's also an educational piece to that, which the city has won awards for in the past, of going out and doing exactly what some of what y'all are talking about. And so it's been inactive probably for 4 or 5 years now, but that system is already in place, and that's through the Keep America Beautiful, Keep Mississippi Beautiful, Keep Columbus Lounge Beautiful aspect. And so there's a lot of files I looked at. It's almost mind-numbing. So whoever that person wants to be, that wants to sit down and go through and start to understand what's already out there existing, so we don't reinvent the wheel, be glad to offer that. So.
And I would say this, just because of my many years of working in the nonprofit world, I would be careful about creating another 501c3. There are 501c3s running out everywhere. And there's a lot of work that goes into those, and a lot of work you've got to do to maintain the paperwork and that kind of stuff. It looks like it can be simple over time, but then it becomes inactive, and there's another 501c3 out there that's not doing anything. There's community foundations where you can set up funds for a group. There is a way to give to this fund that's already, the city already has, and if you make a gift to it, it would be considered a tax-deductible gift because the check would be written to the city. And I think in the past, some of the money that's gone into that checking account was from grants and donations. So I would advise us not to regenerate too many things that are already in place. But I mean, if y'all did, if you think a 501c3, if you've researched that because you use that term and that's the way to go, then that's up to the group. But
we would prefer not reinventing, just from a business standpoint. If there's something that we can flow donations through, that wasn't our purpose to start a new one.
The Lowndes Community Foundation is a part of CREATE, so I mean, it's been around a long time. It's pretty well established. Jim Davidson and Josie Shoemaker.
We should look, you and I should look at those records.
Josie Shoemaker came to one of the talk to y'all one time. I'm sure. Anything else from anybody else? I personally have got another meeting I have to go to, surprise, but I don't want to keep you off from continuing to talk and visit. If any of we've got several department heads here. If y'all, Kenny, Mr. Kenny, Sasha, do y'all have any comments on anything y'all heard?
I want to donate this camera, and I'm not sure who to give it to. We had spoken about the S-curve and such.
Oh, to put it up on the S-curve?
And it's got a digital
It
dial.
actually has you can have an account with AT&T, and it'll send it.
We know about it. We got it.
I thought it was a walkie-talkie.
I did too.
Everybody doesn't know about it.
Breaker.
So, but that's yours.
Thank you. That's
Yeah.
very kind of you.
It's awesome.
We get it
Very
up-
kind.
We get it up tomorrow.
Probably need to put an Apple tracker on it.
And so once we get it up there, how do we just periodically check? Just know you will be seen and contacted if you dump on the S-curve once the new camera goes up.
Oh yeah, we.
Brian from the newspaper asked us earlier today where would be the best location for him to go to take pictures of.
I got pictures of this.
Oh, you, we gave him a couple examples, but I thought y'all might know some locations for him to go take pictures of trash in the city. I think I told him this morning to call you, Miss Stewart.
Trash against, from their parking lot against the fence on a Sunday morning. Nobody picked it up. We were picking it up.
Wishful thinking.
Thank you, everybody. And I'm going to excuse myself, but don't feel like y'all have to leave with me. But I appreciate all the hard work that the city employees do. I appreciate our council people for everything they're doing, and all the volunteers. This is, you know, how we're going to pick it up, Possum Town. Don't be a litter critter, Jeff. Thanks.